this is how to draw patterns in the cocowyo book, and today's pattern is this glitter one. So before we start, don't forget to put some sheets of paper behind the page that you're working on so that you don't ruin the next page if the ink goes through. So I'll be using a Decotime twin marker. It's an alcohol marker, and this is colour number 9, pale pink. And then I'll be using these Staedtler felt tip pens. I've got a light pink, a bright pink, a grey and a red, and also a white Posca pen. This is the narrow nib. It's 0.7 millimeters, so it's only a small nib. So the first instruction says to colour the base and then let it dry. So I'll be using the alcohol marker in the pale pink colour. The brush tip, we've got a little sweater to colour in here. Some nice even strokes in lines so that it doesn't end up all streaky. And you'll know when it's fully dry because they dry very slightly lighter colour, and the page will feel the same temperature as the rest of the page because when it's wet feels very slightly colder. And if you have a little handheld fan, you could speed up the drying process with that. So now that that is dry, I'm going to use the light pink and the bright pink in the Staedtler felt tip pens to do these little hearts here. It says to use 2 bright colours to fill random hearts and then let them dry. So they're not very dark. I will show you the colours. This is the light pink. It's kind of a peachy pink, which looks a little bit like that one. And this is the bright pink, because we're going to need darker shades for later. So I'm going to randomly start drawing the heart pattern on, and they're quite light, but they are quite light also in the example. So just randomly draw them anywhere. And don't forget to overlap the pattern over the sides as well. So you might have half a heart here and there, and maybe slightly different sizes. So now I'm using the bright pink, and some of the hearts might touch each other, so sort of try to ignore the first lot of hearts that you've drawn so that the pattern is more random. And then it says to let that dry. So now that that's dry, I'll be using the grey and the red felt tip pen. It says to add more hearts with 2 darker colours. So this is the grey one. And this is the red one, which is quite a deep red. And we're going to just randomly draw hearts all over again and try to ignore the hearts you've already drawn so that the pattern looks more random. I'll start with the grey. And then with the dark red, do the same again all over. might just add a couple of little grey ones in as well, just to fill in a couple of little gaps. And then let that layer dry as well. So now that that layer is dry, I'm going to use this white Posca pen. It says to use it for some sparkles. So they've drawn some little hearts and some little crosses, and then some big dots and little dots all over. So again, trying to ignore the pattern that you've drawn underneath, but still filling in any little gaps with all these little hearts and crosses and dots to give it a little sparkle effect. And then in between all those little bits, do some little crosses. And then in between some big dots, just randomly you might have to go over some of the little crosses and hearts after they've dried just to make them a little bit whiter. And then all over with these little dots. Sometimes that's a little bit more of a sparkle effect if you cluster some of these little dots together. And then if you did want to actually add some sparkle, some real glitter, you can just take a glitter gel pen in any colour you want. I'm just going to use this silver one and just do some little dots with the silver glitter gel pen, and that actually does give it a little sparkly effect. And just dot that randomly all over. and then that will actually catch the light and give it some glitter effect. So that was this silver glitter gel pen. This is made by, it's a Mitsubishi Uniball silver. And now all I have to do is colour in the rest of the jumper.